You're sitting at a dinner table with people you've known for years. Someone tells a joke and the whole table erupts into laughter. You laugh too, 3 seconds late, just enough to blend in. But behind your smile, your mind is doing something else entirely. It's calculating the exact minute you can grab your coat and slip out without drawing a single question. You've done this before. Smiled through dinners you didn't want to attend and picked up calls you wanted to let ring. You've told people, "Let's catch up soon," while already quietly releasing them from your life, one conversation at a time. And then, one day, without a single argument or a dramatic goodbye, you simply stopped showing up. There was no announcement and no explanation, just a silence that kept stretching without end. Most people assumed you were going through something, maybe depression or burnout or a rough patch you didn't want anyone to see. But here's what none of them ever stopped to consider. You weren't breaking down at all. You were finally waking up. What looks like isolation from the outside is often something far more precise happening inside the mind of someone who thinks deeply. It's not a collapse, it's a recalibration your brain has been running quietly for longer than you realize. And if that sounds familiar, you're not alone in wondering whether something inside you is permanently broken. Nothing is wrong with you, but something did change inside your brain. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what shifted and why it had to happen. We're going to walk through 5 neurological reasons why intelligent people suddenly vanish from everyone around them. And the last one will completely reframe what you believed about why they walk away. Number 1. Your brain started treating every single conversation like manual labor. You're at a coffee shop with a friend who's venting about a problem at work. 40 seconds in, your mind has already identified the root cause and mapped out 3 possible solutions. But they're still talking, while your brain sits idle, looping through an answer it finished minutes ago. So you sit there, nodding, performing the appearance of listening, while your brain waits for the conversation to catch up. This isn't rudeness. It's a phenomenon that researchers call cognitive load saturation. Your prefrontal cortex handles complex reasoning and executive control inside your brain. When your baseline cognitive activity is already running high, that region processes social interaction very differently than most people's does. For most people, casual conversation requires only minimal mental effort. But for someone whose brain is constantly modeling and predicting, even a simple chat demands the same resources used for deep problem solving. Not because the conversation is difficult, but because your brain refuses to engage with anything at surface level. It drags every single interaction into deep processing, whether you ever asked for that or not. Over time, this creates a specific kind of fatigue that has nothing to do with how much your body has done. You're exhausted not from doing too much, but from thinking too much during moments that were supposed to be restful. And when rest itself starts requiring effort, your brain begins doing what it has always done best. It starts optimizing, canceling the events that cost the most energy and deliver the least in return. One by one, the coffee dates disappear from your calendar and the group chats go permanently muted. The invitations sit unanswered, not out of spite, but because your brain quietly reclassified every one of them as unpaid labor. Number 2, you feel what other people feel before they even do. Picture this scenario clearly in your mind for a moment. A friend calls you to vent about a fight they just had with their partner. Within the first 2 sentences, you already sense what they're hiding. You hear the guilt hiding under the anger, and you sense the fear buried beneath the frustration. You detect the part of them that knows they were wrong, but desperately needs someone to tell them otherwise. You carry all of that, silently and precisely, while they talk for 40 minutes and hang up feeling lighter than before. They walk away from that call feeling lighter and more relieved. You feel like you just absorbed an electrical storm through your skin. This is what happens when your theory of mind runs on overdrive. Theory of mind is your brain's ability to model the internal states of other people, their beliefs, desires, and intentions. Psychologists recognize it as a core part of social cognition that most people deploy in moderate doses throughout their day. But in highly intelligent individuals, this system tends to run at a resolution far beyond what any given situation requires. You don't just understand what someone is feeling, You simulate it internally and automatically without ever being asked. Not because you chose to be empathetic, but because your brain refuses to stop building emotional models of every person within earshot. Every conversation becomes an act of emotional computation inside your skull. Every room transforms into a grid of invisible signals your mind insists on decoding, whether the information matters or not. And after years of absorbing feelings that were never yours to carry, something in you quietly reaches a threshold. You stop answering the phone, and you let messages sit unread for days at a time. Not because you stopped caring, but because caring became a full-time job your brain could no longer afford to keep funding. The empathy didn't shut off, but your capacity to sustain it at that level simply ran dry over time. And the cruelest part is that nobody around you notices when you finally hit your breaking point. Because even your withdrawal looks quiet, controlled, and considerate, performed the same way you've done everything your entire life. Number 3. The things that used to excite you quietly stopped delivering. Think about the last time you were genuinely excited to see someone. Not politely pleased, but genuinely excited, the way a name on your phone used to make your chest respond with something real. Now stop and think about how rare that particular feeling has become in your everyday life. You scroll past a group chat notification and feel absolutely nothing inside. An old friend texts asking to meet up, and your first instinct isn't warmth, it's arithmetic. How long will it take? What will you talk about? Will you have to perform interest in something that bores you completely? This isn't coldness, it's your dopaminergic system recalibrating through what neuroscientists call reward prediction error. Your brain constantly predicts how rewarding an experience will be before you engage in it. When the prediction matches reality, dopamine stays stable and you feel satisfied. But when the predicted reward consistently exceeds the actual experience, something shifts inside the machinery of your brain. Conversations start feeling emptier than expected, and gatherings deliver less. And your brain starts quietly downgrading those social predictions without ever asking your permission to do so. It's not that the people around you suddenly stopped being interesting or stopped being worth your time. It's that your brain learned, through hundreds of slightly disappointing interactions, to expect less from social situations than it once did. Not because people failed you, but because your threshold for meaningful stimulation quietly rose while everything around you stayed exactly the same. And once your brain stops expecting reward from something, it stops generating the motivation to pursue it altogether. That friend you haven't called in 3 months, you don't dislike them. Your brain simply stopped producing the chemical push that used to make you reach for your phone and dial their number. The desire didn't die in some dramatic moment or a painful falling out between you. It faded so slowly that you didn't even notice it was gone until someone pointed out the growing silence. And here's what makes this so difficult to explain to anyone who hasn't lived through it themselves. From the outside, it looks like you simply stopped caring about people. But from the inside, you know the truth is far more precise. You stopped being chemically rewarded for reaching out. And without that reward signal, your behavior quietly followed the new equation. Not because your heart changed, but because your brain updated the math and stopped sending you the invoice to connect. Before we get to number 4, take a moment to notice something. Every point so far has described one pattern through a different lens. Your brain isn't malfunctioning, it's optimizing itself for survival in a world that never stops demanding. It's cutting social costs that exceed their cognitive return, and it never once asked your permission to do so. But the next 2 points go deeper, because they explain what your mind is doing with all that reclaimed space. And the final one might permanently change how you understand every quiet night you've spent alone. Number 4. Your inner world grew louder than the outer one. You're lying in bed on a Tuesday night, replaying a conversation you had 6 hours ago. Not because it went badly, it was perfectly fine and ordinary, forgettable to anyone else who was there. But your mind is editing it, restructuring your sentences, questioning your tone, analyzing every word you chose. You do this with conversations, decisions, memories, and hypothetical futures. Your inner monologue operates like a parallel life running underneath the one that everyone else can see. Neuroscientists call this your default mode network, a web of brain regions that includes the medial prefrontal cortex. It also includes the posterior cingulate cortex, and it fires whenever you stop focusing on the external world around you. Research in cognitive neuroscience has shown that people with higher cognitive ability tend to have a more active default mode network. It doesn't quiet down when the world around you gets quiet. It actually gets louder, filling every single gap with restless thought. This means that solitude for someone like you is never truly empty. It's the opposite, the only state where your deepest thinking finally has room to breathe and unfold without interruption. When you're surrounded by people, your brain splits its bandwidth between external social demands and internal reflection. When you're alone, those resources merge, and your mind operates at a capacity that social settings never allowed. This is why intelligent people don't experience withdrawal the way others imagine. They're not sitting in dark rooms feeling sorry for themselves at all. They're building ideas, frameworks, and insights in a cognitive workspace that only opens when the noise finally stops. The outside world sees an empty chair and assumes something went wrong. But inside that silence, they've never been more awake or more alive. They're not hiding from life. They finally found a room where their mind can stretch to its full size. And once you've tasted that kind of space, every crowded room starts to feel like a cage you volunteered to sit in. Number 5. Your body decided before your conscious mind ever did. You're standing in your kitchen on a quiet Friday night alone. Your phone has 2 unread invitations and a missed call from someone who genuinely cares about you. The apartment is quiet. Not lonely quiet, but the kind of silence that feels like cool water on a burn. And in that moment, something settles in your chest that you haven't felt in a very long time. Not happiness, but relief, as if your entire nervous system just exhaled for the first time in years. This is what researchers describe as the resolution of chronic allostatic load inside the body. Your body has a stress response system called the HPA axis that releases cortisol to handle threats and demanding situations. In small doses, this system keeps you sharp, focused, and responsive. But when you spend years in environments that constantly demand cognitive performance, that system never fully powers down. Reading rooms, managing perceptions, and processing emotions that don't belong to you become daily tasks. Your brain treats each of these as a job, demanding dedicated neurological resources around the clock. Cortisol stays elevated, not because you're in actual danger anywhere, but because your nervous system lost the ability to distinguish a birthday party from a low-grade emergency signal. Over months and years of this relentless processing, the sustained activation accumulates quietly inside your body. Scientists call it allostatic load, the body's running tab for stress it was never designed to carry this long. It's the where your body absorbs silently while you keep showing up, keep smiling, and keep performing for everyone. Your disappearance wasn't a decision made by your conscious mind. It was a command issued by your nervous system, a biological override that chose survival over social obligation. Not because the people around you were harmful or toxic, but because your body hit a threshold where even neutral, well-meaning interaction registered as pure cost. Your mind might have kept pushing forward for another year, answering messages and showing up to every event, but your body knew something your mind hadn't admitted yet. The cost of staying visible had quietly and unmistakably surpassed the cost of walking away from all of it. And this is the part that absolutely no one ever tells you. When intelligent people disappear, the world immediately frames it as a problem that needs to be solved. Something to fix, something that went wrong, something that needs a worried phone call or a knock on the door. Friends wonder what they did wrong, and family assumes the absolute worst. And the person who left sits quietly in their apartment, breathing easier than they have in years. They sit there wondering why no one ever told them that silence could feel this much like finally coming home. But what if disappearing was the single most intelligent response their mind and body could have chosen? Not because the people in their life aren't worth loving, But because staying tuned to a frequency they'd already outgrown would have cost them the one thing they cannot afford to lose: their clarity, their depth, and everything that makes their mind worth protecting. Think about that dinner table from the very beginning of this video. You sitting there, smile carefully in place, mind somewhere else entirely. That wasn't the moment you actually left those people behind. You'd already been gone for months, maybe years, before anyone noticed. The empty chair didn't create the absence that everyone suddenly noticed at that dinner table. It just made something that had been true for a very long time finally visible to everyone else. You were a radio transmitter that had been slowly shifting frequencies for as long as you can remember. Still broadcasting, still thinking, still feeling, still carrying more than anyone around you ever realized was there. But somewhere along the way, you moved to a channel that no one around you was tuned to anymore. And the silence that followed wasn't emptiness, or loneliness, or defeat. It was the sound of finally being on your own wavelength after years of static. So if you've been standing in that quiet, wondering whether something fundamental inside you is broken, listen closely. Here is what the research and the neuroscience actually say about you. Nothing inside you is broken, and nothing about you ever was. Your brain identified a pattern of diminishing returns and executed a withdrawal strategy to protect your most valuable resources. That isn't dysfunction or failure or weakness of any kind. That's intelligence doing precisely what it was always built to do. If this describes something you've felt but could never quite put into words, consider subscribing to this channel. This channel exists for the part of your mind that's always running, even when the world around you goes completely quiet. And tell me in the comments, did you disappear because you were exhausted or because you finally saw clearly?